Hello, I'm Lisa Getzler, Executive Director of Lehigh University's Baker Institute for Entrepreneurship, Creativity, and Innovation. We're here today at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center in the heart of San Francisco's financial district. Lehigh and the NasdaqCenter have a newly established partnership focused on teaching entrepreneurship in a way that creates well-rounded, properly skilled entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinkers, with the idea that successful companies will follow. Lehigh now calls the center our home on the West Coast. Today we're focused on a Lehigh-founded startup. Our guests are the two founders of Real-Time Cases. Please welcome Jake Schaufeld, CEO, and Andrew Pohley, President. Welcome to you both, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start with the obvious question. Jake, what is Real-Time Cases?
So Real-Time Cases is a multimedia platform where we go and interview the executive teams of companies you love and brands that are engaging, like Custom Ink, Kind Healthy Snacks, and we develop educational content in case study form for students to work on so that they can send solutions back to the companies and really take the concepts and theories that they have, that they're learning in the classroom, and apply them to something that's happening right now.
So as though the founders or the C-suite was in the room, you are exposing students to the wisdom of those people, and then in return, they're getting the wisdom of the students in the class who have that naive set of eyes that sometimes will see things and ask questions that perhaps have been missed by the company.
Absolutely.
So how long have you been in existence?
We have been around for about 3 years. I think we had our 3-year anniversary back on the 2nd.
And yeah, in February. We started in February of 2014. Jake was still in school at the time. I had been working down in Houston, and we moved back up to, or I moved back up to the Virginia area, and Jake moved down to the Virginia area after graduating Lehigh in May. And we brought this to fruition, raised some venture capital, and here we are 3 years later, selling cases.
That's great. It's very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, as you both know, at Lehigh, we believe that innovation occurs at the intersection of disciplines. You heard that a million times when you were students there. But the truth is, you two and you had a co-founder in the beginning, all came from different backgrounds. So, Andrew, I think you were an engineer.
Yeah.
You said, and Jake, you studied in the College of Arts and Science in environmental sciences.
Yep.
Is that right? You both were entrepreneurship minors.
I was not.
Oh, you were not, okay. Although the bioengineering program had a lot of entrepreneurial aspects to it, I think.
Certainly. The IPD program in particular at Lehigh really lended a lot to the inspiration from what I brought to Real-Time Cases.
So that's really my question. How has your company benefited from this multidisciplinary perspective that you bring? What's good about it?
I mean, one of the biggest issues when you're dealing with just a business in general is you have a lot of business issues, and then you have a lot of product issues, and then you have a lot of people issues. And one of the biggest ones for me was just learning how to work with people who think completely differently than you and can bring, another perspective that you've just never consider, because you're maybe looking at just the numbers, or you're looking at a classic business model, and that's probably the biggest part, because businesses are just groups of people, and they're models that you create with people, and if you cannot learn how to work with people, especially people that are different than you, then you'll never really benefit from the stuff that you're not as good at.
It's those differences that really bring the product to something special. So, me with my engineering background, I have a very rigid analytical view to the way I approach business. Jake is definitely far more creative than I am and willing to get his hands dirty in a lot of areas that I don't want to touch. And we are able to bounce those different styles off of each other to our success and our benefit. If we were to only listen to ourselves in this, or listen to people that would just say yes to us all the time, we would never really go anywhere.
Jake, you started this company in a class at Lehigh. Tell me a little bit about that, and more importantly, the trajectory you've been on since then.
Absolutely. So I took this class, entrepreneurship class, where you basically you were forced to try a business model and see what you could figure out, and forced to talk to customers and do a lot of stuff that you might be very uncomfortable doing. Our other co-founder, Jordan Levy, was in that class as well with me, and I was throwing around a bunch of very crappy business ideas. He had an idea that really stemmed from a lot of his frustration and that I could relate to with the way business content was being taught. And he brought an idea, why can't we make things up to date? Why can't we make them competitive to me? And we took the network that we already had and then tried to really just test assumptions. I was lucky enough that I had been working throughout college for a venture capital firm, doing due diligence, financial valuations, and then also working with a lot of executives where I learned business challenges by working with them instead of studying it. And we tried to really mimic that experience. And the biggest thing was just testing. What are the biggest assumptions? Do students enjoy this? Do professors care? Can we make a case or make any kind of video? And that's one of the things I actually loved most about that class at Lehigh is you're forced to do something. The biggest barrier to entry is doing anything. So many people say, I had this great idea, or I came up with Uber years ago, or whatever else. But until you do something, it's just an idea, and that's what prevents most people from being successful. It's just not really, they keep not really trying it. They keep,
right, it's all about the execution.
Yep.
And so the idea really resonated, of course, at Lehigh, where immersion programming is something that you experience to some degree. You mentioned the IPD program, the class that you took where you had to try something, you had to do something. Lehigh has been running this Lehigh Silicon Valley program for a number of years. I think you participated in that, Jake. And so being in a room with the founders and funders of a startup company was an experience for Lehigh students, continues to be, that often changes their perspective on themselves and on their place in the world. And so it seems to me that you have taken that idea to the next level and created the opportunity for students and professors to have that immersion experience. Whether or not they have the personal connections to make that happen, you're bringing that to the table for them. It's a wonderful model, and I'm so pleased that you put that stake in the ground and actually did something, as you said. So one of the things I can remember from when you were still students at Lehigh is that you had applied for our summer idea accelerator called Launchbase C, which is a part of the Mountaintop Initiative at Lehigh, which is focused on delivering education in a new way. And we looked at your progress and your company at the time, and we said, wow, you're a little too far along to be part of a student idea accelerator. You've accelerated your idea. You've started a company. We want to find a way to be able to support you in that. And so we carved out a little spot for you at the Baker Institute's Ben Franklin Tech Ventures student incubator, and you spent the summer there. I've heard tell that you had some great support from the Ben Franklin network, and in particular the manager of the company's Wayne Bars. You want to comment on that?
I mean, Wayne was super helpful early on. I mean, it's funny because I think we spent way more time in his office, and I don't think we actually spent any time in the office we were given. We just
right.
We spent all of our time either talking with him or out trying the business. And he was just super helpful. He was super enthusiastic about what we were doing, and gave us a lot of early direction. That was great. I mean, and one of the scariest things when you're out there is you don't realize a lot of people are dealing with the same issues. And you feel like you're on an island, and nobody gets it, or nobody wants to support us. Even if you're getting support, you don't feel that way. You feel that way. And Wayne was like, "Oh, I know another company dealing with that same issue, and all of these things," and it put things in perspective for us. And he was very, very helpful. Yeah, we spent a lot of time in his office.
Well, that really is the benefit of the opportunity when we're able to put students in the space. But I think what you bring up is a really good point. It can be a lonely business, entrepreneurship. Success can be lonely, failure can be lonely. Failure is certainly something I think we all recognize as important to adding to your resilience, and people talk a lot about grit. And I'm certain that there have been many places along your journey that have required rethinking, retooling, and those kinds of ideas of resilience and tenacity and grit. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah,
Andrew?
certainly. So grit is absolutely one of the most vital traits you can have when starting a business. But even more so, I would say it's getting rid of your own ego. Being able to accept the fact that you're not going to be able to do everything, and somebody's always going to be able to do something you do better than you. And being able to pull in those resources and getting out of your own way to make sure you're benefiting the most for your company and your business. I've seen many startups here and there just fail because there's infighting between the co-founders. There's so much ego going on with, I don't know if we need to hire this new person to do my job, things of that nature. And I think that's what kills the business quicker than anything else.
Well, back to your point about it's the people, right? It's the people, it's the team, and the execution on the idea, and being open to the learning that occurs as you get to know your customers and stakeholders and end users, and really listening to what they say. So I couldn't agree more. You know, when you left Lehigh, you had a pretty robust beta test going on. You had, I don't know, a dozen or two companies, I think, probably several schools who were adopting the model. And so that was 3 years ago. Where are you now?
So when we started with the beta test with 3 universities. It was Lehigh, Georgetown, and Occidental, and we were just very lucky to get professors who were willing to give us a chance with that. And now we work with about 100 universities, mostly up and down the East Coast, a few West Coast, and then also several internationally. So a lot bigger, a lot more to manage, but you know, we're very happy with where it's grown from there, and we have thousands of students using our content and accessing our platform every day.
What does the average student response look like? How are they responding to what they're getting through your product?
Do you mean more like the response to the product or the response to the executives?
The response to the product, meaning that they can respond to the case.
Mm-hmm. I mean, students, it's actually very surprising, felt more engaged. Mm-hmm. They were happier. They enjoyed doing their homework. We do a lot of testing and a lot of focus groups whenever we can. And I remember one time in particular that we did a focus group at Georgetown, and students saying, yeah, I was listening to these videos over and over again, and I enjoyed doing my homework. And I was almost brought to tears because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Because when you're working on a business, you always feel like you released it like too early, and you're super proud of. I mean, you're proud of it, but you're always like, it wasn't that good. And we always are trying to improve. But just getting those kind of responses is awesome for us to see. Wow, we're actually making a difference, and we're actually able to engage students so that they enjoy learning. Because I think our stuff is good, but we absolutely need to improve and consistently be improving. But getting that feedback from students has been great. I think one of the best things about what we do is we're really getting rid of a lot of barriers to entry, or a lot of barriers to education. In general, it's very easy to be passionate about education. Everyone says, I'm passionate about education, I want to learn, but more so, people create their own barriers. If you and me were working together and there was some issue between us, and I came to you and I say, what the hell's wrong? I've immediately created a barrier to learning what was wrong by myself, even though I'm obviously very passionate about finding out what's wrong.
Sure, right. Well, certainly getting the student feedback has been primary in your belief in what you do, but I can't ignore the accolade that you've recently acquired, and that is being named by Forbes 30 Under 30 in the education space. So what does that do for a company like yours?
Oh, it's a game changer. People around the world know you now. Professors are calling us up to put us in their textbooks. It has given us a level of exposure we had never really felt before. Yeah, it absolutely has changed the game for us. And yeah, we were very honored. to get
Wow,
the
congratulations
award.
on that.
Absolutely.
It was very exciting for us to learn that was where you landed, and it's a very, a short landing point because you will be taking off again towards the next big milestone, I'm sure. So one of the things I want to talk to you a little bit about is the idea that all students who are interested in entrepreneurial thinking and acting might not become founders of companies. And when you were taking classes in entrepreneurship as a member of the entrepreneurship minor, you were surrounded by students who some had dreams to launch companies and have, and others might never do that, but they might make great employees at a startup. So in thinking about how we can educate students like that, what do you look for when you're hiring interns or new early hires?
Yeah, certainly. So 60-70% of our workforce are millennials. A lot of them are fresh out of college, and they bring a level of excitement to this that is really unparalleled. What we really look for is somebody that can be open and honest about what irritates them in the workforce. That way we know where to put them, where to pair them. We also want somebody who is able to wear many different hats and be comfortable in that environment. So you may be doing a marketing press release one day and then turn around and have to sift through some Salesforce email cleanup the next day. And you've got to be very agile in the way you're able to approach that work. And third, I would say somebody that fits into your culture. So when we say culture nowadays, it's how decisions are made. And somebody has to be able to conform to the whole group and how they make decisions, as well as the people at the top have to be able to, take off their robes for a second or their crown for a second and realize that if you're not going to form a democratic process out of this, your people are going to leave,
Right.
and you need your people more than just as much as you need air.
Exactly right. So as educators, we want to prepare students for that kind of experience. So we know how to prepare students to be accountants and to be engineers, although there's nothing like doing the work at a company. So what is your thought about interns? Sometimes we think, startup founders are so in it. You couldn't possibly have time to have an intern working with you. But what about that? What do you think about that?
I think there's always work to be done, and it's important, in your company to structure things effectively that you can really utilize interns. I would say for interns, if you're looking at working with a startup, the biggest thing is don't be too rigid. Just accept that your job's going to change and go with the flow and really take what comes to you, because everything's going to change all the time, and people help for different stages of a company. There's a lot of stuff not figured out. You have to be okay with the anxiety of going into a department and then having to figure out all of the policies. There have been several times when people have literally started a department and they come to me and say, "What do we do in this situation?" I say, "We've never thought about it. What do we do?
You tell
what
me.
What do you think we should do?" And you figure it out at that point.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that, and it's very hard. But if you can really take your own ego out of it and accept, I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff. Some stuff I like, some stuff I don't like, different things. Some stuff that doesn't come to fruition, other stuff that does. You can be very successful, and I think internships are fantastic because you learn a lot of that because you're going to be thrown into whatever is helpful for the company.
Well, I love that you see it that way. Internships are very valuable for students. That experiential learning can't be replaced. There's no other way to do it than to become immersed in it. That's certainly how the Baker Institute sees the world. It's also how the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center sees the world, which was largely why we created a partnership with them. So having the NasDaq Center here in San Francisco as a resource for startups in the Bay Area, having Lehigh partnered with them as a resource for Lehigh students and alumni and friends and others that we hope to bring into Lehigh's way of educating is a very exciting time for us. I've always run the Baker Institute as a business. It was a startup 7 years ago, and now this is our new project. It's a new startup for us. So just off the cuff, as alums, what do you think we should be doing for alumni here at the NasDaq Center?
Making them uncomfortable.
Oh, I love that. So tell me more.
It's very, a lot of people are much more comfortable studying things or staying to themselves or working on what they're very good at instead of what they're not good at. And the more you can put students in uncomfortable situations, especially in business or things that they've never done or just have to figure it out, the more they're learning. The more uncomfortable you feel, you're almost always learning more.
Great advice, Jake. I couldn't agree more. That's wonderful. So we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for being with us here in the studio.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you both. Again, Jake Schaufeld, CEO, and Andrew Pohley, President of Real Time Cases, co-founders of a startup that was launched at Lehigh University. So here for the Lehigh at the NasDaq Center, I'm Lisa Getzler, Director of the Baker Institute for Entrepreneurship, Creativity, and Innovation. Thank you for watching.